Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lin. Namaskar. In the next 1 hour, we'll focus on the economic survey. Coming up, economic survey tabled in Parliament calls for bold entrepreneurial policy making, says India must sprint while running a marathon. Prime Minister Narendra Modi calls the economic survey a comprehensive picture of India's reform express, reflecting steady progress in a challenging global environment. Chief Economic Advisor says the rupee weakness is driven by global volatility, not India's fundamentals. India's Economic Survey 2025-26, tabled in Parliament, highlights a nation on the move, resilient, ambitious, and firmly positioned as the world's fastest-growing major economy. Here's our report. India's Economic Survey 2025-26, tabled in Parliament, showcases a nation on the move, resilient, ambitious, and firmly positioned as the world's fastest-growing major economy.
वित्त मंत्री श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमण.
Sir, with your permission, I rise to lay on the table a copy each of the following papers, Hindi and English versions: Economic Survey 25-26, Economic Survey 25-26 Statistical Appendix.
With GDP growth projected at 7.4% and gross value added at 7.3%, India continues its streak of leading global growth for the fourth year in a row. Fiscal credibility has been reinforced with stronger revenues and 3 sovereign credit rating upgrades in 2025.
As far as the growth rate that is needed, that mention of 8% is in dollar terms. So if you are able to grow at sustainably at 7% on average, there could be a given year in which it is higher, or another year could be lower, etc. In real terms, in Indian rupee, then if you were to add the inflation rate that will be experienced in the United States, for example, minus the inflation rate in India, that is what will give you the dollar GDP growth rate. Historically, even in the last 40 years, India's dollar GDP growth has averaged about 8.7%.
The financial sector is healthier than ever, with gross NPAs at a multi-decadal low of 2.2%. Over 55 crore Jan Dhan accounts have deepened inclusion, and more than 12 crore investors, a quarter of them women, are participating in India's markets. Exports are surging. India's share of global merchandise exports has nearly doubled, while services exports hit a record US dollars $387.6 billion. Remittances reached US dollars $135.4 billion, and foreign exchange reserves climbed to USD $701.4 billion, covering 11 months of imports.
The long-term answer is manufacturing competitiveness, exports, and in the short run some developments may not be in our control, but more importantly, the fact that the rupee is not reflecting the macro fundamentals and the sustained growth rate will definitely catch the attention of some investors, and that is when the tide will turn.
Food grain output rose to 3,577 lakh metric tons, while schemes like PM Kisan have delivered over 4 lakh crore rupees directly to farmers. Manufacturing is thriving, with PLI schemes generating 18.7 lakh crore rupees in production and creating more than 12 lakh jobs.
In rural development, 81% of rural households now have access to tap water. 2.9 crore houses have been constructed and 2.76 crore property cards issued under Swamitwa. When it comes to healthcare, 14.3 crores beneficiaries registered on the UWIN portal, 42.8 crore Ayushman Bharat cards issued, 1.8 plus lakh Ayushman Arogya Mandirs operational.
India's infrastructure is expanding rapidly. High-speed corridors now span 5,364 kilometers. And airports have more than doubled since 2014. Education and healthcare are advancing with new IITs, IIMs, and AIMS, and maternal mortality has fallen by 86% since 1990. The Economic Survey 2025-26 tells a clear story. India is not just growing, it is transforming. With strong fundamentals, inclusive policies, and bold investments, the nation is on course to become truly indispensable to the global economy. Bureau Report, DD India.
And amid a challenging global environment, India continues to stand out as a bright spot for economic growth. The Economic Survey 2025-26 notes robust infrastructure creation, expanding aviation capacity, growing renewable energy adoption, and also a resilient external sector supported by strong FDI and record remittances. Here's a detailed report.
India stands among the fastest growing major economies in the world and has recorded remarkable progress over the past 2 decades. The Economic Survey 2025-26 stated that World Bank ranks India among the top 5 countries globally in terms of private investment in infrastructure among low and middle income economies. India also emerged as the largest recipient of PPI investment in South Asia, accounting for over 90% of the region's total private infrastructure investment. This strong global standing is reflected domestically in the marked increase in project approvals by Public-Private Partnership Appraisal Committee. India has positioned itself as the world's 3rd largest domestic aviation market. The number of operational airports expanded from 74 in 2014 to 164 in 2025. In financial year 25, Indian airports handled 412 million passengers, a figure projected to rise to 665 million by financial year 31. Air cargo volumes similarly witnessed significant growth, increasing from 2.53 million metric tons in financial year 15 to 3.72 million metric tons in financial year 25. This rapid expansion has been driven by transformative policy initiatives and reforms, including the RCS Udan scheme, the Greenfield Airport Policy, airport modernization and capacity expansion programs, digital and technological initiatives such as DigiYatra, liberalized drone regulations, and key legislative measures including Bharatiya Vayuyan Vidhayak 2024 and the Protection of Interests in Aircraft Objects Act 2025, as noted in the survey. India's energy sector is undergoing a structural transformation, with renewable energy accounting for approximately 49.83% of the total power generation capacity as of November 2025. The country ranks 3rd globally in overall renewable energy capacity and installed solar capacity, and 4th in installed wind capacity. Total renewable energy capacity has increased more than 3-fold over the past decade, underscoring India's commitment to sustainable growth.
If renewable energy were to become a significant part of the energy picture, we need to understand the ramifications. The amount of material required and the energy required to therefore generate renewable energy should not be underestimated. We should go into it with open eyes.
The survey further observes that India remained the world's largest recipient of remittances, with inflows reaching $135.4 billion in financial year 25, thereby supporting stability in the external sector. Gross investment inflows remained robust at 18.5% of the GDP in financial year 25. India continued to be the largest recipient of gross FDI inflows in South Asia. The country emerged as the leading destination for greenfield digital investments between 2020 and 2024, attracting $114 billion. During April to November 2025, gross FDI inflows strengthened further to $64.7 billion. India's foreign exchange reserves rose to $701.4 billion as of 16th January this year. The Economic Survey underscores that India's infrastructure strategy in recent years represents a decisive shift towards scale, integration and quality, with sustained public capital expenditure acting as a powerful catalyst for economic growth. Despite a challenging global environment, India continues to be the fastest growing major economy, supported by strong agricultural performance and sustained momentum in the services sector, which have effectively offset the moderation observed in industrial activity. Bureau Report, DD India.
And reacting to the economic survey, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the survey highlights strong macroeconomic fundamentals, sustained growth momentum, and the expanding role of innovation. The Prime Minister wrote on X, and I quote, "The economic survey tabled today presents a comprehensive picture of India's reform express, reflecting steady progress in a challenging global environment. It highlights strong macroeconomic fundamentals, sustained growth momentum, and the expanding role of innovation, entrepreneurship, and infrastructure in nation building. The survey underscores the importance of inclusive development with focused attention on farmers, MSMEs, youth employment, and social welfare. It also outlines the roadmap for strengthening manufacturing, enhancing productivity, and accelerating our march towards becoming a Viksit Bharat. The insights offered will guide informed policy making and reinforce confidence in India's economic future," unquote. As Budget 2026 approaches, India's green push takes center stage. From renewables and green hydrogen to climate finance, India is powering sustainable growth towards a Viksit Bharat. Tapas Bhattacharya reports.
As India advances towards Viksit Bharat, the government's commitment to clean and sustainable growth continues to gain momentum, setting the context for expectations from the upcoming Budget 2026. The Ministry of New and Renewable Energies Budget 2025 stood at 26,549 crore rupees, marking a sharp 53.5% jump, an increase of over 9,250 crore rupees compared to the previous year. This expansion clearly underlined the centre's intent to fast-track India's green transition. A decade ago, the renewable energy budget was just rupees 956 crore. In 10 years, allocations have grown by an extraordinary 2,678%. Under the Modi government, the total MNRE funding over the last decade has crossed 93,386 crore rupees, reflecting a 955% increase in sustained public investment. Budget 2025 underlined the government's clear push towards accelerating the clean energy transition with a strong focus on capacity addition, grid integration, and creation of a new clean energy ecosystem.
Given the huge thrust to energy transition and the digital infrastructure, whose backbone again would be the green power, if you could expect certain domestic content requirement protection measures across the larger supply chain, wafers, ingots, eventually, or a clear policy directive, that provides more clarity. And possibly if there's some LTCG benefit for global investors to come in, I think that would bring in a lot more FDI, as opposed to that being shifted to various other countries in this volatile global political scenario.
The year 2025 also proved to be a turning point, recording one of the highest annual additions of renewable energy capacity in India's history, led by a record solar installation and a revival in wind power. With India already crossing 250 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel capacity, expectations from Budget 2026 are high. With a strong focus on clean energy, green hydrogen, and climate finance, India's Budget 2026 is expected to underline a clear message. Economic growth and environmental responsibility will move together, steering the nation towards a sustainable, resilient, and a truly Viksit Bharat by 2047. With Campus and Mukesh, this is Tapas Bhattacharya for TD India from Delhi.
Well, in the run-up to the budget, it's apt to take a look at the state of the economy, and that's what the economic survey did today. But over the past 2 years, the Indian economy has weathered global headwinds with stability supported by stronger capital flows and a robust financial system. Yet households continue to seek relief, and industry leaders call for support and reforms as expectations are high. India is well positioned to turn macroeconomic stability into acceleration, shaping not just the year ahead, but India's long-term trajectory towards a Viksit Bharat by 2047. Let's look at this report.
As February 1 draws near, anticipation builds for the Union Budget 2026. Macroeconomically speaking, India stands at a moment of strength. Over the past 2 years, the economy has shown resilience with growth steady, inflation manageable, and public finances credible. The financial system is stable and external balances are improving, supported by stronger capital flows.
India remains not just the fastest growing major economy, but our macroeconomic it's a very benign, very stable climate, means that our growth is likely to continue. Our domestic demand is what is driving a lot of this growth.
Growth momentum is expected to hold steady in FY 2026-27, averaging around 7%. Inflation, meanwhile, has moderated to 1.33%, holding well within the Reserve Bank's comfort zone of 4%. Urban and rural households are shoring up domestic demand, but would expect relief all the same for that momentum to continue. Macroeconomic stability has been achieved, but investors expect structural reforms to continue. Industry leaders are calling for policy support in renewables, innovation, and MSMEs.
When you have crisis, countries will try to take advantage of the crisis, and we are seeing that happening. And I think that's why it is an opportunity for India to rise.
Government has already signaled intent, approving fresh equity infusion into SIDBI to boost credit flow to small businesses. Expectations go further: tax relief for the middle class, incentives for manufacturing, and measures to sustain India's role as a resilient hub in a shifting global trade order.
The FTAs are designed to do is to facilitate the development of international manufacturing supply chains in India. From my perspective as an economist, that's the most important goal for FTAs, which means that we have to have FTAs with the developed countries because our economies are complementary.
Analysts expect focus on fiscal discipline, capital flows, and reforms that can sustain growth momentum while keeping inflation in check. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will likely take macroeconomic stability to acceleration. As has been the case in the past, this budget is expected to not just shape the year ahead, but provide a roadmap for India's economic trajectory to a Viksit Bharat by 2047. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, agriculture remains the backbone of India's economy, supporting livelihoods across the country and driving rural demand. As expectations rise ahead of the Union Budget 2026-27, the focus is firmly on how the government plans to strengthen the farm sector through credit support, income security, sustainability, market access. Here's our report.
Much hope and speculation also surrounds the measures that Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will announce for the agriculture sector in the fiscal year 2027 Union Budget. Agriculture contributes about 18.2% of India's GDP and employs nearly 50% of India's workforce. The Union Budget for 2025-26 recognized agriculture as a key growth engine for the economy and emphasized measures to promote productivity, seed innovation, and sustainable farming.
देसी कंपनियां जो बीज बनाती बीज उत्पादित करें क्योंकि प्राइवेट सेक्टर की भी जरूरत है और इनोवेशन और रिसर्च एक तरफ आईसीआर भी करता है, यूनिवर्सिटीज भी करती है, दूसरी तरफ प्राइवेट कंपनीज भी करती है, तो कोई अगर करे तो इनोवेशन का फायदा किसान को मिलना चाहिए.
The coming Union Budget for 2026-27 could see some of the following measures being adopted for the agricultural sector. According to experts, improving farmers' access to credit and finance would continue to be an ongoing priority. The budget could extend further support to farmers in the form of subsidized loans to support modern and sustainable farming practices. This could include expansion of the Kisan Credit Card (KCC) scheme to cover more farmers, especially small and marginal landholders. Special loans for farm machinery, irrigation and organic farming could also be announced in the budget. With the government's stress on the welfare of the farmer, income support for small and marginal farmers could be another focus point of the Union Budget this year. So the budget could include
Well, we are privileged to have with us the Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India, Dr. V. Anantha Nageshwaran, joining us live now on DD India. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. Now, GDP growth is estimated at 7% for FY27, and you speak of entrepreneurial states. So to what extent is this already happening? What's already the case in India with this concept? You know, the Prime Minister talked about competitive federalism some time ago.
You're absolutely right. I think India lately has been beginning to adopt elements of entrepreneurial state, which is to boldly experiment, do away with processes, focus on outcomes. And that has been the reform trajectory in the last 11 years of the current government. And I think we are seeing that accelerate, in particular in the last 12 months, whether it is the direct tax reform, the GST reform, notification of labor codes, opening up the insurance and the nuclear energy sector, creating a lot of trade agreements with multiple geographical regions in the world. So you are seeing a lot of risk-taking and entrepreneurialism in policy making. And it is not just something that happened in the past, but it is very much in the present and continuing as well. And that is one of the main reasons why we felt confident, despite the global environment, to be able to elevate our estimate of the economy's potential GDP growth.
Right. Dr. Nageshwaran, also inflation is benign, and analysts say that the RBI has room to continue monetary easing. But could such low inflation also signal weak demand, and could it dampen growth momentum?
Well, it's possible, but if you look at the reasons why inflation has been very well behaved, largely it is due to the deflation in food prices, and also energy prices have been well behaved. And if you look at core inflation, it's around 2.9%. It's neither too low nor too high. It's quite comfortable. So I don't think we are having a situation of inflation being too low as to signal weak aggregate demand. And if you look at the growth rates we anticipate in the private final consumption expenditure, household consumption, we are expecting 7% growth this year. And that is not very surprising given the kind of direct tax, indirect tax reliefs that the government has given, putting more disposable income in the hands of the people. So it's not possible for me to say that our low inflation reflects weak aggregate demand conditions.
So Nageshwaran, also you did mention that the rupee's fall is linked to the current account deficit, and also that a growing economy will necessarily need more imports going forward. Is there enough being done to raise manufacturing and export capacity as you have prescribed?
Oh, I think that's a work in progress. I mean, from the PLI, Atmanirbhar Bharat schemes to now National Manufacturing Mission and the deregulation exercise that are oriented towards making small and medium enterprises grow. I think these are all elements of, giving a primary place to manufacturing. And in fact, that is what the cover of the economic survey also symbolizes. We have to get into manufacturing and also exporting manufactured goods. That is what will give us, in this geopolitically challenging situation, will give us strategic resilience. And I think the investment in physical infrastructure in the last 7 to 8 years is something that will definitely boost the manufacturing capabilities of the Indian economy over time as well.
So you did mention physical infrastructure, and capital expenditure reached about 4% of GDP, but we are in turbulent times. India's credit rating also has been upgraded. So is the fiscal position good for sustained public investment in infrastructure?
The fiscal position of the Union government has been good, and Union government also has been supporting capital investment in states with the Special Assistance Scheme, SASCI. So in that sense, there is room for sustained capital investment on the part of the Union government, but states can do better, and that is why we have made some observations regarding the unconditional cash transfers and how they are being done by sacrificing capital expenditure. And if that is addressed, then the combined capital expenditure of the union and state governments will definitely support continued infrastructure investment and upgradation as well.
So you talk about the combined capital investment of both the center and the state, but what evidence suggests that private investment is also reviving independently, and how resilient is this trend?
Yeah. So if you look at the overall capital formation ratio of around 30-31% of GDP under the current global circumstances and competition from Chinese products, that investment rate is actually quite respectable. And if you look at the bottom-up data from states, we realize that in 24-25, states have invested quite well. and also post-COVID in 21-22 and 22-23. So 23-24 was the only year in which state private sector capital formation was a bit on the weaker side. So I think under the circumstances, the private sector is investing. Obviously, it can't be at the same rate as they did in the 2003-8 period, because at the time the global economy was booming and uncertainties in general were much lower. But we should continue to therefore do whatever we can at the policy level to be able to incentivize and nudge private sector capital formation.
Given the rising global trade fragmentation, how vulnerable then is India's external sector? Are the FTAs helping India competitively?
You answered it. In fact, the vulnerability is precisely what is being addressed through these multiple free trade agreements. And especially the one that we have reached with the European Union is a very important one, given the number of consumers and how big the size of the European Union economy is. And that is giving our exporters, particularly labor-intensive exporters, a lot of options in the light of the ongoing tariff uncertainties with the United States.
PLI schemes generated about 18.7 lakh crore rupees in production. How do we measure whether these incentives are actually creating long-term competitiveness rather than, just gains for the medium term?
Well, the measure of long-term competitiveness is basically rising export share. And that is the only way to measure long-term competitiveness. And if we are able to continue, if we are dependent on intermediate and primary goods from overseas, then obviously we are not doing enough on long-term competitiveness. So I think ultimately the test of long-term competitiveness is what the Honorable Prime Minister said. Dam kam and dam zyada. He said this in the Independence Day speech in August 2025. If we could achieve that, then we are competitive both domestically and in foreign markets.
Dr. Nageshwaran, if we look at the agricultural sector, horticulture now seems to be surpassing food grain production, even though we have record food grain production. So is crop diversification supporting, food security, ensuring food security, one would ask?
Food security is something that we have achieved and we are still very comfortable there. But I think crop diversification is required for multiple other reasons as well. Maintaining soil fertility, taking care of our water tables, and also more importantly for nutrition. Because producing rice and wheat is basically to encourage more carbs rather than proteins and so on. And also some of these crop diversification will help us deal with climate resistant crops as well. So food security is something that India has comfortably achieved. But if we have to improve productivity, raise agricultural exports, then we should be able to focus on more diversification into hardy crops, which also are more nutritious and healthy for the average Indian household as well.
A lot has been said, Dr. Nageshwaran, about the Jan Dhan accounts. How active are they actually in contributing to financial empowerment?
I think the economic survey provides the statistics. I don't recall them at the top of my head, but definitely they have been mostly widely used for receiving a lot of unconditional cash transfers coming from states and the union government, and they have active balances. More than 2 to 3 lakh crores of rupees are held in the Jan Dhan accounts, and they have served as a very good springboard for these individuals to start their own businesses and get more credit from the formal sector.
Are current labor reforms addressing underemployment and informal sector vulnerabilities as well, sir?
Yeah, undoubtedly. In fact, the notification of labor code sends a very strong signal both to employers and employees that the government is keen on ensuring a fairness between these two stakeholders in the private commercial space, and more importantly, a certain predictability and the clear definitions of minimum wage and protection, at the same time giving employers flexibility in managing their workforce according to cyclical business conditions is also going to incentivize more job creation as well.
Right.
Can we wrap up?
Yes, sir. Final question. One last question. You have mentioned about the three-tier discipline, the Swadeshi strategy. How will policymakers actually decide which sectors need to be fitting into this? Because there's also high-tech industries.
The economic survey in chapter 16 actually gives a 2x2 grid to understand and to specify which sectors we need to focus on and which we can do it later and leave it to market forces. But it's a combination of, or a trade-off between desirability and feasibility, and what is available in terms of technology, who's willing to share it with us, etc. And in some cases, we may even have to incur higher costs because they are so essential that we can't depend on foreign sources in this current environment. So that kind of a framework is there in the 16th chapter of the economic survey as to how to go about achieving Swadeshi or intelligent indigenization, followed by resilience and followed by strategic indispensability.
Dr. Anantha Nageshwaran, thank you very much for sparing the time to talk to us here on DD India.
Thank you.
So we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue with DD India News Hour. Stay with us.
Open your mind to a whole new world. Explore mystic wonders of nature in the forests.
स्वागत आहे टू मैग्नेटिक महाराष्ट्र.
So the budget is round the corner, and let's begin with the health of the Indian industry and how it is doing.
We are growing well, and I think the estimates at this point in time truly reflects a very strong positive, not just the sentiment, but also what's really happening on the ground. The budget and the forthcoming weeks and months and years would really help us get into a much higher growth trajectory. There is a growth which has helped us also to be a very inclusive growth. The digital side of it has included people. It has increased opportunity for Indian companies, global companies. The private sector capex story is strong, but I would also imagine that the public sector capex is a great to keep the private sector, the multiplier effect on the private sector to be on through it.
So to sum it up, just the headline priorities for the viewers for the budget from the perspective of the Indian industry.
I would think that if we can get that foresight into the private sector by making it invest into future-ready industry, by bringing in research and development and innovation of its products and its services, it will go a long way.
When you're watching DD India News, I'm Mark Lin, and for more on the economic survey, we are privileged to have with us Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, eminent economist, currently Vice Chancellor of Nalanda University, in the studio with us. Thank you very much, Dr. Chaturvedi, for being with us. Now, the Prime Minister says that this is, it's a comprehensive picture of India's reform express. So, I mean, reforms are moving at a fast pace. What would you say?
Definitely, I think the performance that has been presented in the economic survey very clearly shows the kind of key components that we need in our growth story. The inflation is down, forex has gone up. If you see the broad situation of balance of payment, it is under control. The remittances have gone up, and on the skill education, all the desirable numbers are there. The trends in terms of enrollment that has gone up, our capability in terms of connecting with the states and making an inclusive economic growth story, that has come out absolutely well from the economic survey.
Right, but the economic survey also talks about states developing some entrepreneurial spirit because we are in turbulent times. While the macroeconomic fundamentals are strong, the rupee has an issue.
Yeah.
So all these things, how would you gauge, whether the prescriptions given here
Yep.
are actually, going to put us on that trajectory where we are looking at, long-term trajectory of Viksit Bharat 2047?
Exactly. So the idea of what they explained in the chapter on AI in terms of caution, etc., in the last economic survey,
Right.
and this time instead of regulation, we are talking about entrepreneurial base. So this, Mark, is a story which you see spreading across all sectors, and that's where you find greater traction for what we started a couple of years back with startup. You find more of private energy getting unleashed across sectors, and you find more and more government responses coming in to leverage that strength, what has come up with the ecosystem of startups. The second important component which you would see is in terms of the technology. And that's where I think the major attraction lies, not just artificial intelligence, but if you see the amount of accomplishments that they have listed, both in terms of the centrally sponsored schemes for promoting science and technology, but also state and private sector led initiatives for disseminating STI expansions that have taken place through programs, but also accomplishments that have got disseminated through multiple channels. So you find an ecosystem that is necessary for leveraging private sector economic growth contributions, I think have come up very well on that roadmap.
So sticking to the point also of the Prime Minister saying that, India's reform express is moving forward, the economic survey also talks about deregulation and, a new kind of culture that needs to be built up in terms of the bureaucracy as well. I mean, he did mention that, in his press conference that the bureaucrats need to start thinking about, not only the number of rules that they have to follow, but the number of rules that they have to break so that they can actually get out of this mindset.
Yeah, Mark, if you see, he was trying to compare the way bureaucracy had a visionary approach when software sector
Right,
grew,
exactly.
and how Watal and many others contributed to that. So that part I think is well said. But I think the emphasis largely that the economic survey brings in, and as you said, to the growth story, they mark the excessive sort of dependence for Indian growth to come in would be from the manufacturing sector.
Okay.
And the economic survey has put up special sort of recommendations for state governments, for other entities at the central government level, but also in terms of how private sector should do that. And they have tried to also link this up with the declining rupee. So if we want strong rupee, country should be strong with the manufacturing. Right. And he has even gone up to the extent of saying that services sector-led growth may be sort of complementing what one may achieve through strong manufacturing sector, but services sector cannot be a substitute. You have to have a strong manufacturing sector. And I think the green growth idea that Prime Minister Modi talked about, the idea that Finance Minister launched in the last budget, I think is extremely important. This budget, which is coming up in next 2 days, would be giving in this idea of manufacturing, contributing to the idea of current account sort of advantageous position, leading to the foreign exchange reserves that we need and eventually a strong rupee. So that's where the concerns have been sort of articulated in the economic survey.
So in terms of trying to get the rupee to get stronger, you did mention, of course, that manufacturing is essential. But when we look at the external sector, because at the end of the day, it's money that's coming in, FDI, because he says as we grow also, we're going to import much more. And we have to be prepared for that. And so money coming in terms of FDI, would you say that, the credit ratings that India has received and also the mood currently with projections of over 7% growth, all this is the right environment to bring in this kind of FDI?
Absolutely right, Mark. And if you see in economic survey, At one place, they have talked about manufacturing and, of course, Swadeshi. So, indigeneity within the impetus that you need for economic growth. But at the same time, they have emphasized for external resource inflows that are needed. Here, you need to delineate it at two levels. One, the economic survey also articulates this position, which we have been taking for long now. 38% of India's export is import dependent. So, you are part of some value chain. You are producing some parts and components, you have some semi-finished products which are putting all the value chain together. So, this indispensability that India has to acquire in the days to come would come through excellence in manufacturing. That part economic survey makes clear. Now, coming to your point in terms of how the FDI that we are expecting is actually going to supplement. So, most of the FDI that has been coming in, now if you see world over, there is huge decline in non-portfolio investments. So, the footloose soldiers of FDI, that number is declining. Those who are genuinely interested in greenfield projects are investing. And as a result, you find a huge scope in terms of how India puts up a growth story which is attracting investment in the value chains that we are talking of. So, the AI sector, the fact that cost of data has gone down and has gone down remarkably well in last decade, that shows the attractiveness across multiple sectors where we are looking at for this kind of investment to come in. And I think the streamlining of the labor laws, the efforts to minimize imperatives related to labor cost, I think are some factors which are going to play an important role in this regard.
Dr. Nageshwaran, had said in an earlier economic survey that we need to grow at about 8% regularly to reach this goal of Viksit Bharat by 2047. So he was asked a question this time as well, and then he said that in dollar growth, we are actually growing at about 8.7%. Saying that, I mean, if you minus the inflation in the US and you, so I mean, it is a bit complicated for a man to understand that, because when you say that, the rupee is falling, but in dollar growth, how are we actually growing? Would you be able to explain that to us?
See, Mark, there are three things here which we should put separately. First and foremost is this huge component that he mentioned in terms of the geopolitics factors, because they keep on changing. So, this growth rate vis-a-vis the global scenario, that component also he explained in a very quick manner. The second part comes in more in terms of how you calculate the base year that you take and the currency valuation that you take. So, if you take the dollar terms that which he explained, it gives you the kind of numbers that he explained. But if you take it in the rupee, where you are seeing decline and constant decline, actually everyday decline, there you find that story doesn't get two together, and there's reason for that. The current account deficit has, though he said, has expanded, but if you see it in rupee terms, we are facing challenges. We are also facing challenges in terms of the open market operations, OMOs, which RBI is doing, is trying to balance the situation. But then how much and how long? So that's where the story actually ends. And that's where the previous point that we were discussing of push for manufacturing, I think is extremely important.
So the finance minister, of course, has tweeted, and she says that India has successfully navigated global headwinds, so that we have seen, and you've been explaining that. And she also talks about what you were saying, Swadeshi to strategic reliance, to strategic indispensability. And, earlier we should be thinking about buying Indian. Now we should be moving to buying Indian without thinking twice. So, I mean, in this context, are we moving in that direction?
I think largely the quality and the supply chain systems are coming up in such a way that our people are buying and options are coming up. So, we have multiple alternatives coming in. It is also important, as I said earlier, the dependence on specific parts and components is huge, and that's where the manufacturing is required. So, we are producing some part of something, we are producing some larger component of some commodity that we need, but specific value chains for which we ourselves are depending, that would have to be addressed to reduce that vulnerability and people to get everything that is produced in India.
So we now, of course, live in a world where we are working on bilateral trade agreements or FTAs, and as a result of that, I mean, to what extent are Indian producers going to get better value for products? And will that sort of incentivize them to rather export than to sell in the Indian market? Of course, the Indian market is also very strong. It's strong enough to be holding up the economy. But because of, let's say, lower purchasing power here compared to, let's say, in the EU, is there a possibility that, certain products will only be moving in that direction?
Fairly possible. It also, Mark, depends upon the demand pull that comes in from other countries and differential
textiles,
pricing.
for instance.
Because,
textiles, let's say.
Textiles, but also the premium products like some specific variety of mangoes, which people don't see here. They go to the external markets. Textile, our competition with Chile, with Sri Lanka, with Bangladesh, multiple countries, Vietnam, they would be our sort of competitors in those markets. So I don't see major price differentiation to be done by our producers here. But certainly Africa and the others, we have done since 2021 8 major FTAs we have signed under several categories. So I think it is fairly possible for our traders to bring in greater rewards for themselves by exporting. But as you rightly said, the base in the Indian market has also expanded. The purchasing power has gone up across the markets, and you find surveys after surveys showing that even in rural areas, the capacity to buy high-end products has gone up.
So that's what they want to tap. I mean, these countries are hoping to tap the Indian market.
So that's where the competition, and that's
where the competition comes
in. For both
the
domestic producers
and how would
exporters.
How is it going to improve product quality standards? And are we going to see now some sort of a global situation where standards are get prominence and manufacturers have to reach a particular standard to be in the market?
That's where, Mark, more efforts are required. Immediately after the EU agreement was signed, a lot of concerns were expressed about quality of products and our ability to pass through the so-called non-tariff barriers, which would be blocking on name of standards. So we would have to cope up with the kind of standards that are there and also see where they are actually anti-Bs and how do we overcome them. But the crux of the matter would certainly be in terms of attaining those standards which are there. The cost escalations, the material requirement, the technology gap, those would be the issues we would have to see to minimize so that we remain competitive but with quality, and that would be the crux.
So talking about that, remaining competitive, we are moving after all into the era of Industry 5.0, as Minister for Information Technology says. And this is AI driven, and of course we don't know who's driving and who's leading currently, but it's all new. It's like the first day of a test match and nobody knows actually the first innings what's actually happening. But the US has invested such a lot into this, and we can see that they have developed growth as a result of this. The IMF seems to suggest that this could be a dot-com bust kind of situation. How would you think India should be looking at this?
See, one thing that we are seeing in terms of infrastructure investment, the numbers are very clear. The gross fixed capital formation numbers have gone up. So you find that the essentials are very much in place. Our ability
for
to
artificial intelligence,
for economy as a whole, and then AI-related industrial infrastructure is also coming in place for many states, and we are seeing the investments pouring in those states where the state governments have taken due care, like Gujarat or Tamil Nadu, where infrastructure is available. AI-related investments have gone up in those states, including Maharashtra. These are the 3 states where you find major investments. So you require infrastructure to come up, the skilled labor to have a place stay and contribute. So these three states again are leaders in this. So this very clearly shows what essentials are required. The second tier comes in terms of technological investments, and the quantums have multiplied. One full chapter in Economic Survey today gives a full account in terms of where education, infrastructure, the processing, the skills that are required for AI. Top on that comes in form of regulation. It also comes in terms of minimizing labor laws related imperatives that are also going to affect this sector. So all state governments have tried to insulate AI related industries from these kind of shocks, and that I think is going to pave way for future expansion.
And how do universities deal with this? Because at the end of the day, the skilled manpower comes through the university system.
And I think for last 2 years, since the full implementation of NEP 2020, Education Minister has been explicitly asking universities, and lot of universities have formed clusters. Some of them have formed clusters among themselves, and some have even brought in private sector to contribute in terms of data mining related courses, but also AI broadly focused courses. So 3 different tiers have come up in these courses across different universities. So you find some sort of appetite for contributing to that direction.
Let's go back again to the issue of the macroeconomic fundamentals. We know that inflation is low, and inflation being low, I mean you've been with the RBI, so the committee decides to ease when inflation is low. But the point is that I mean some analysts look at it as if inflation is low, it could actually be a sign that there's not enough demand in the economy as a result. I mean, although we are seeing the opposite results, but could this also be a sign that we need to be careful about?
That's really not the case at all, because you find credit expansion on a fairly fast pace than ever before. You find credit expansion in personal loans, you find credit expansion for small medium enterprises and even for big enterprises. So the saving rate and credit creation rate, they are going on a pace that is very much desirable for the kind of 7.4% growth that we are expecting. You find that the credit expansion with the 13.4% and savings rate, which was in fact going slightly slower, and the RBI governor raised concern about it, the balancing and convergence is likely to happen. So credit expansion has actually given that number to us, that declining inflation is not any kind of indication of squeeze in demand.
A final question, everyone looks at the economic survey as pointing towards the budget. So I mean, we see that there may be some suggestions there. What would you think? I mean, what are your expectations from the budget this year?
I think 3 expectations, Mark, are absolutely clear. On the macroeconomic front, more push for capital expenditure, which Finance Minister has been doing. The economic survey has again advised to go in that direction. That's number 1. Number 2, on specific sector, the AI infrastructure requires more push. There are some 12 different suggestions that have been made in the chapter related to AI. So I think those should get traction. Third, and I think which is very important, after Manrega was renamed and rural development programs are being converged, I think more push on rural infrastructure would be the demand.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi. Thank you for joining us here and helping us understand what the economic survey points to for the Indian economy and what's likely to come in the budget. Also, I mean, not directly, but some sort of hints where the budget may go from the economic survey. That's all we have in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those of you on the go, you can get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code and download it now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lin from all of us here in Delhi. Thank you very much for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.